The fanboys have officially lost their ever-loving mind. What's up, people? It's your boy, MM2K of Hard Knock Digital Culture, Cloud Dosage, and MM2K Gaming back again with another episode of Quick Dose. This is where we talk about the latest and greatest in the video game world news, and man, oh man, do we have one for you today. But before we get into this one, do us a huge favor. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, rock those bells for notifications, please, so you know when we're dropping these doses. We appreciate it, everybody, as always. And make sure when you're rocking those bells, you change it to all, not personalized, so you don't miss any of the content we got coming your way. If you're watching this video as a precursor to NRO Podcast, buckle up. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about Xbox Avowed. We're going to be giving our thoughts on the PlayStation Showcase, along as the financials that I'm going to talk about right now briefly. And then we're going to be talking about the best games shown so far of 2025 and more. All right, let's get into this one. So unscripted, totally unscripted. This is off the grip. You know what I'm saying? I want to show you guys something in relation to the latest financials that were sent by Sony or forwarded to us by Sony. So in order for me to do that, I got to do this. This is a tweet that I sent out, and I said, this is why console sales matter. The more people that commit to your console, the more they commit to buying games from your dedicated marketplace. Marketplaces generally make more money than publishers. Why the blank you think Steam, or really Valve, makes games every 50 years and primarily sells-ish via Steam. All right? What am I talking about? Well, shout out to Nib. He put out this comparison here, where we got Xbox's quarterlies not too long ago. It would have been fiscal year quarter 2 for them. Sony's fiscal year runs differently, so it's fiscal year quarter 3 for PlayStation. But in the fiscal year quarter for Xbox's hardware was down 29%. Right? Some people may say, well, what's there to panic? Xbox says that everything is an Xbox. Well, even though they dropped Call of Duty in Game Pass, their premier service day and date, content and services only went up 2%. And total gaming revenue went down 7%. Right? PlayStation, in contrast, for quarter 3 fiscal, which is the same time period, it's October through December, PlayStation hardware went up 16%, but for those of you that want to shy away from the hardware, like that doesn't matter, their network service and services went up 28%, and their total gaming revenue went up 16.5%. As a matter of fact, if we go to this next tweet provided by Derek Strickland, based on the data provided by each company, Sony commanded approximately 50% of the big three's revenue. So Sony and PlayStation alone, for all of calendar 2024. Now, this is January through December 2024. PlayStation, during that period, according to Derek Strickland's data, they made $30.8 billion. Microsoft, Xbox, even with ABK, recorded $22.7 billion, and Nintendo came in at $8 billion. So Sony alone almost had as much revenue as Xbox and Nintendo combined. It was pretty much, it was 50-50 between PlayStation alone and Xbox and Nintendo. That's crazy. And as far as this fiscal quarter is concerned, it was the biggest fiscal quarter for PlayStation as far as them selling consoles. They sold 9.5 million PlayStation 5s. But here's the big kicker. 42% of those PlayStations that were sold, or the PlayStations bought during that period, seemingly were purchased by new users. And that's according to data that shows as people were buying their consoles, and of course to update them and to play their PlayStation 5, you either sign into an existing PlayStation network or a network account, or you create a new one. And 42% of the people that bought PlayStation 5s, they were signing up on new accounts, meaning these were not PlayStation 4 people. Okay. So I've seen some conversations online about, well, are these just converts from the PlayStation 4, which the data shows otherwise, and people trying to downplay this in several ways. But the two biggest statistics or slides for me is this one and this one. The two biggest statistical slides for me, and again, it would be helpful if I showed you and not had the video playing, was this one, which shows the comparison, and this one showing you how much of a juggernaut PlayStation is. People don't understand this, and we're going to break down why they don't understand it. They don't understand it because they think that it's all about how many games you sell, that you create, versus being a marketplace. They have this whimsical belief that publishers make more money than marketplaces, and they don't. Simply put, as I said in the tweet, why the F do you think Valve makes games every 50 years and primarily sells ish? Why do you think that? Valve games are some of the most critically acclaimed and sought after games out there. I remember people were begging them, when's the Half-Life 3? When's this come? They ain't jumping to that. Why? Because they're making hand over fist with Steam. Now, as much as they're making with Steam, they still aren't messing with the revenue that's being made by PlayStation. They're not even messing with the revenue that's being made by Xbox. But let's just focus on PlayStation, because PlayStation, out of the two, acts more like a marketplace, where Xbox is only as close as they are to PlayStation because they bought Activision Blizzard. And as the days go by, they're acting more and more like a publisher. They've even forsaken their own platform to extract exclusivity from that to put these games on PlayStation, their former rival. And still technically is a rival to their platform, but they're showing you at this moment how less of a priority their platform is. And that's not to say that they won't make a handheld, or just rumors that they finally greenlit the production of a next gen piece of hardware or whatever. I'm not saying any of that is true, but there's going to be time before that hardware comes to fruition. So right now, the Xbox hardware is taking a backseat to everything else. Not just the hardware, but the platform. It's taking a backseat to everything else. Because they want to sell these games. And they said, according to Tim Stewart, who's part of Microsoft, and he doesn't say what he says unless the people above him agree to it, that their approach now is for high margin business, meaning the stuff that they were doing before was not high margin. Game Pass wasn't high margin, and their console wasn't high margin business. Remember, that's why they had to paywall to free-to-play games, because, and they said this numerous times. I remember talking to the homie Randolph Thor, I wasn't talking to him. I was listening to something that he had said during a podcast years ago, and he was informed during that podcast. He mentioned that he was informed that the reason why they have the paywall is to subsidize for the console. So Microsoft's always had problems with the fact that they're always going to lose money on the console, unlike PlayStation, who makes money on their consoles after a good year or two. As a matter of fact, with the PlayStation 5, they made money, or they made returns faster on the PlayStation 5, I believe faster than any other console previous, if my data is right. At least faster than the PlayStation 4 and definitely the PlayStation 3. Right? But what people don't understand is they think it's just selling the consoles. People are jumping up and down in that. No, about that. When you sell the console, That's a heavy commitment. You're paying what, $400 or $500, right? To gain access to a marketplace. A marketplace that you can only get on PlayStation. See, people thought I was console worn when I kept showing you guys time and time again how PlayStation was the only place that you could get the top 20 games that were on NPD for year-to-date polling. You go look at all those top 20 games, and every single game that was making the year-to-date top 20 lists on NPD, there was only one marketplace where you can get all those games on that list. And that was the PlayStation 5 marketplace. It wasn't even a PlayStation 4 marketplace. It was the PlayStation 5. And see, so that stuff correlates. So when you have situations like that, that leads to situations like this, where again, 42% of you get 9.5 million PlayStation 5s are sold, because what is that? 58% of the people that were on PlayStation 4, 58% of the people rather were on PlayStation 4s or had old PlayStation accounts. So they said, okay, if I want to get access to all these cool games, I got to go get a PlayStation 5. But there's 42% of that group who actually realized that the only place to get all those games is on the PlayStation 5. So therefore, they left where they were at previously in order to get a PlayStation 5, or they at least added a PlayStation 5 to their portfolio. So you guys think that this is all about console war. It's not about that. It's about telling you what's actually going on versus the fanboys that want to put up a lot of smoke and mirrors. Now, speaking of fanboys putting up smoke and mirrors, even though we've previously quoted Derek Strickland, and I like Derek because he seems like a nice guy, I just think he's too emotionally charged in the fight for Xbox that it goes against his better journalistic judgment. What am I talking about? Derek put this out here, right? And let's scroll up here. Derek says here, he talks about the revenue, right, and how it broke records and all of this stuff, but he follows up with this. He throws some red meat out for the Xbox fanboys, of course. Despite the new revenue record, PlayStation's Q3 fiscal year 24 operating margin was just 7%. Right? So, if their profit margins, which were just 7%, if that's bad, then help us understand, Derek, what's Xbox's profit margins? Because I ask him here, I say, hey, Derek, in contrast, do we know what Microsoft's gaming's profit margins were? I know during the FTC trial, there was a mention. They were in single digits as well. And since the acquisition of ABK, wanted to know if this is still the case. Try looking for here. And I follow up with one of Derek's articles, right? Now, if you look at this thread, I'm not going to give this thread the light of day because it's a bunch of fanboys hopping in there. Why you want to know? Why you want to know about Xbox? Well, if PlayStation being at 7% is just 7%, then what's Xbox at? And it's more important to know where Xbox is at because look, when you look at the financials, Xbox actually went down. So what was their profit margins? The total, screw the Xbox hardware. The total game revenue was -7%. So what was theirs? We've talked about time and time again on this channel that yes, for Sony, their single-digit profit margins for PlayStation is an issue for them. It's definitely a hurdle for them, and they've been doing things, some things garnering more reputational risk, and they're learning the lessons from it. As they try different things to get those back up into double digits, because normally PlayStation is in double digits. But my thing is, one, if they're just in single digits and that's bad, what's Xbox at? And secondly, how do I know, as I state here, that they're in single digits or that Xbox was in single digits? Because I found out from Derek. This is an article from September 2023, which he had to update on October 9th, 2023, where Derek again tried to put together some red meat numbers in the favor of Xbox fans. And he does. And sometimes he put out good stuff. And not everything that's negative towards Sony is red meat for Xbox fans, but sometimes he puts together figures that don't show you the whole picture, but they just serve as red meat. Let's look at this again. He talks about how, he's discovered and he's found out Xbox's profit margins and how their profit margins seemingly exceed 12% or something like that, right? But then he had to correct it because this came out during the FTC trial. As he had put this thing out here and published it, making it seem like that Xbox's profit margins at the time were better than Sony's. Here's what Phil said during the FTC trial that our good friend Derek missed. It says, according to our findings, Xbox Gaming had 12% accountability margin, or in his belief system or in his description, that's the profit margin. Okay, I won't argue with them there. For a 9-month period in fiscal 2022. However, in the aforementioned testimony that he used to try to supplement and prove this 12% profit margin. However, in the aforementioned testimony, Phil Spencer says that, quote, the Xbox business today runs at a single-digit profit margin. Look, folks, I'm all for talking about these profit margins because that's what I talk about here. We talk about the business side. I just don't like when this data is caveated to try to make someone else look bad, especially when there's nothing bad here. There is nothing bad about Sony's financials or PlayStation's financials. Does Sony want to see the profit margins get back up to 2020 and prior levels, which are double digit? Absolutely. And they will do that. They are dealing with increased production costs, right? Gaming costs as well, but mainly peak production costs, erratic fluctuations in the yen that are temporary. Those things are temporary. So as they deal with those temporary issues and try to find ways to still raise their profit margins, I think even though it's 7%, it was a 17% increase from the last fiscal quarter, which they broke records there too, I believe. So even though that's the case, this is going to be temporary. They're going to be back in double digits once the cost of the chips and things like that and the yen stabilizes. They'll get there, but they can't just sit there and idly wait. So they got to do things to make their stock look as lucrative to investors as possible. But is this a panic button, ejectocito cuz moment? No. And again, if we're going to highlight PlayStation's profit margins, let's look at Xbox's. And I'm not saying that to say that conclusively Xbox's profit margins through 2024 were less than Sony. They could be more. Let's see it though. Let's not run half the story. And let's not only look at something that's bad when it looks bad for the piece of plastic across the street. And I just feel impartial to journalists doing this. You can have your preference. I just think that you should use your journalistic, horsepower to come down the middle and look at everything from 5,000 feet. And we're seeing too many journalists try to act like influencers. And they need to stop. Journalism is in a horrible spot. Gaming journalism is at a horrible spot because too many people want to hide behind the keyboard and become influencers. And the integrity of what is supposed to be our checks and balances system here is horrific because of it. And I'm just talking about gaming journalism as a whole. I like Derek. I just think sometimes his emotions gets the best of him, and then this red meat stuff comes out and it doesn't look at everything from 5,000 feet. With that said, we're going to talk more about this because Sony's financials are bonkers. but we're also going to talk about the state of play, which very polarizing and not as, globally as great. But when you look at these numbers are fantastic. Do they want the profit margins to be higher? Yes, everybody's dealing with crazy profit margins. Nintendo saw a significant drop in their profit margins. We don't even know what Xbox's is. All right. So with that said, that's it from your boy. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below, because like I always say, here's what I think. But if you did like what I had to say, check out the links below to follow me. Again, they'll lead you to Hard Knock Digital Culture, Cloud Dosage, MM2K Gaming. Again, if you're watching this as part of the podcast, stay tuned. If not, check out the card to the left. If you're watching this as a separate VOD, check out the card to the left. It will lead you to said podcast, which you're definitely not going to want to miss. With that said, peace. Have a wonderful gaming day.